Lawrence died nearly penniless. The Motion Picture and Television Fund paid for her funeral and burial at Hollywood Memorial Park, which is now the prestigious Hollywood Forever Cemetery. For over 50 years, the first movie star lay in a completely unmarked grave. Her final resting place was a patch of anonymous grass, a tragic symbol of how completely the industry she helped build had forgotten her. It wasn't until 1991 that a British actor, Roddy McDowall, paid for a proper headstone. The simple granite marker finally gave her a name in death. It bears her name, the title, The Biograph Girl, and the poignant, corrected inscription, The First Movie Star. Her grave, once the epitome of abandonment, is now a testament to a legacy that was almost completely erased, saved from obscurity only by the kindness of a fellow actor decades after her lonely death. Arbuckle died in his sleep from a heart attack. He was just 46 years old. Following his death, his body was cremated. His widow, Addie MacPhail, stated that it was his wish that his ashes be scattered over the Pacific Ocean. As a result, there is no grave, no tombstone, and no memorial for one of the foundational figures of film comedy. His final resting place is the vast, unmarked ocean, a fittingly anonymous end for a man whose name and legacy were deliberately and systematically erased by the Hollywood machine, leaving nothing behind for fans to visit or for the industry to formally acknowledge. Despite her immense fame and status as a cinematic icon, she was not buried in a grand Hollywood mausoleum. Instead, she was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, in a crypt that was, for many years, unmarked. For decades, one of the most famous faces of the silent era had no name to mark her final resting place. Eventually, a simple bronze plaque was added, reading Theda Bara Brabin, along with her dates. The crypt is located in a quiet, less visited section of the massive cemetery's mausoleum. Her final resting place is a stark contrast to her on-screen persona, modest, unassuming, and for a long time, completely anonymous, a forgotten tomb for the woman who was once Hollywood's most exotic and dangerous star. Prevost died broke. Her estate was worth only $300. Fellow actress and former rival Joan Crawford, along with several other Hollywood figures, stepped in to pay for her funeral and burial. She was laid to rest at the Hollywood Memorial Park, now Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Her grave, in the Abbey of the Psalms Mausoleum, is a simple crypt marked with her name. While not physically overgrown or unmarked, her grave is a symbol of a deeper kind of abandonment. Her lonely death became a cautionary tale in Hollywood, a grim reminder of the industry's disposable nature. The story, later immortalized in the Kenneth Anger book Hollywood Babylon and a Nick Lowe song, ensures her legacy is forever tied to the tragic circumstances of her end. Her modest crypt a quiet testament to a star who was left behind by the town she once entertained. He was buried in Wilmersdorfer, Waldfriedhof, Stahnsdorf, a large woodland cemetery southwest of Berlin. For decades, his grave was a point of interest for horror film aficionados, a modest but dignified final resting place, marked with a simple, weathered headstone bearing his name. However, in 2015, the grave was desecrated. A trespasser, believed to be a fan or occultist, broke into the cemetery and stole the original grave marker, leaving only the empty plot behind. The theft was a literal act of abandonment and disrespect, with the actor's last physical memorial being ripped from the earth. While the cemetery administration has since replaced the stone, the incident serves as a bizarre and unsettling postscript to Shrek's life, proving that even 80 years after his death, the macabre mythology he created on screen continues to haunt his final resting place. At the time of his death, Switzer was broke. His family had him buried at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, but they could not afford a headstone. For 40 years, the grave of one of America's most beloved child stars was completely unmarked, a sad patch of grass known only to a few cemetery insiders. It wasn't until the late 1990s that a group of devoted fans, led by a Michigan tourist, raised the money to purchase a proper marker. The simple granite stone is now engraved with his name, dates, and an image of Petey the dog, the Our Gang mascot. His grave, once forgotten, is now a sad reminder of a Hollywood childhood that ended in tragedy and decades of anonymity. He left a simple, direct suicide note that read, "To my friends, my work is done. Why wait?" He was 77 years old. Following his wishes, his body was cremated. His ashes were not interred in a grand mausoleum or beneath a towering monument. Instead, they were buried in a very modest plot in the Kodak Founders section of Eastman Business Park, the industrial complex he created in Rochester. The grave is marked by a simple flat stone set flush with the lawn. It is a humble and surprisingly anonymous final resting place for a man of such immense wealth and influence. A man whose work is seen every time a film is projected, yet whose grave is almost completely abandoned by the glittering world he helped create. Much like Roscoe Arbuckle, there is no gravesite, no memorial plaque, and no columbarium niche where fans or family can pay their respects. The final resting place of the dashing, award-winning actor is the vast, anonymous sea. This lack of a physical gravesite feels like a form of abandonment, a reflection of the chaotic and untethered nature of his final years. His legacy lives on through his talented sons and his body of work, but his physical presence was erased completely, leaving no trace on the landscape of Hollywood or anywhere else. Lupe Velez was buried not in Hollywood, but in her native Mexico. Her body lies in the Panteón Civil de Dolores in Mexico City, one of the country's largest and most crowded cemeteries. Her grave is marked by a striking bronze statue of a grieving woman. While the grave itself is a beautiful work of art, its location places her far outside the Hollywood circle where she made her name. In this sense, her grave represents a final retreat from the industry and the scandal that led to her death. It's a resting place that, while not physically neglected, feels abandoned by the Hollywood world, a memorial to a star who ultimately returned home to escape the judgment of the town that had both made and broken her. Navarro was buried at Calvary Cemetery in East Los Angeles. His grave is located in a quiet section of the cemetery and is marked by a simple, flat, granite headstone engraved with a cross and his name. It's an exceedingly modest marker for a man who was once one of the biggest movie stars in the world. The grave is not a major pilgrimage site and receives relatively few visitors. Its simplicity and lack of fanfare make it feel abandoned, a quiet and lonely end for a man whose life ended in such a violent and tragic explosion of the secrets he had guarded for so long. Minio's body was flown back to his native New York for burial. He was laid to rest at the Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Hawthorne, New York. His grave is marked by an upright, polished black granite headstone, which features a theatrical mask of comedy and tragedy, and the inscription, "The heart is a lonely hunter." While the grave is well maintained, its location thousands of miles from the center of the film industry makes it feel disconnected and somewhat abandoned by Hollywood. It's a somber memorial to a brilliant young talent whose career was cut short by prejudice and whose life was ended by a senseless act of violence. Peter Lorre's body was cremated. For more than 10 years, his ashes went unclaimed. They sat in the mortuary, abandoned and seemingly forgotten by his family. It wasn't until 1974 that his daughter finally had them interred in a communal vault at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. His final resting place is a simple niche in the cathedral mausoleum, marked by a small bronze plaque with just his name and dates. The decade-long abandonment of his remains is a sad postscript to the life of a beloved and iconic actor. His small, simple plaque offers no hint of the cinematic giant he was, a minimal marker for a man whose on-screen presence was anything but. He was buried at the Pierce Brothers Valhalla Memorial Park in North Hollywood. For nearly a decade after his death, the final stooge lay in a completely unmarked grave. There was no headstone to identify the man who brought laughter to millions. In 2002, a fan club called the Three Stooges Fan Forum raised the funds to purchase a proper headstone. The marker now features his stage name, Curly Joe, his birth name, Joseph Wardell, and the fitting epitaph, The Last Stooge. The grave's initial anonymity is a striking example of a legacy left untended, a final punchline that wasn't funny. Like his fellow stooge, Curly Howard, whose modest grave is often overlooked, Curly Joe's resting place was, for a long time, truly abandoned, saved from permanent obscurity only by the fans who never forgot him. She was buried at Oaklawn Memorial Gardens in Indianapolis, Indiana. Her final resting place is a simple, flat bronze marker, set in the grass alongside her parents. It bears her name and dates, and is engraved with a cross. The grave's modesty and its location in a quiet Indiana cemetery feel like a world away from the glamorous and chaotic life she led in Hollywood. In a way, It is a perfectly abandoned grave, not in the sense of being neglected, but abandoned by the industry that exploited her story for profit both during her life and long after her death. It's a humble, private resting place for a woman who spent much of her life fighting for a moment of peace, a final, quiet statement of her escape from the town that built her up and then tore her down. Dorothy Dandridge was cremated, and her ashes were interred in a small niche in the Freedom Mausoleum at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. The niche is located in a wall alongside countless others, marked by a small, simple plaque bearing her name. For an icon of her stature, the final resting place is shockingly modest and anonymous. It doesn't reflect her importance as a civil rights pioneer in the film industry. Her grave feels abandoned by the Hollywood that failed to give her the career she merited. A small, quiet marker for a monumental talent who broke down barriers, but was ultimately broken by them. Lugosi was buried in one of his signature, silk-lined Dracula capes. He was interred at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California. For decades, his grave was marked only by a small, simple plaque that did not even mention his most famous role. It was a humble and overlooked resting place for a horror legend. In 2003, fans raised money to add a larger, more fitting tribute. A black granite ledger stone was placed over the grave, featuring a large image of Lugosi as Dracula, his name, and the inscription, "Beloved Father." The grave, once a symbol of his sad, impoverished end, has now become a shrine for horror fans, rescued from its state of partial abandonment by the generations who continued to be mesmerized by his unforgettable performance. He was cremated, and his ashes were interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. He was not placed in a grand mausoleum, but in an outdoor columbarium. His niche is small and unremarkable, marked by a simple bronze plaque bearing only his name and dates. The final resting place of the great lover, a man who was once the king of Hollywood, is humble, overlooked, and largely forgotten by the public. It is a quiet testament to one of the most brutal and rapid career assassinations in Hollywood history. A truly abandoned grave for a star who was deliberately cast aside. She was buried at Fairview Cemetery in Penn Argyl, Pennsylvania, next to her father. Her heart-shaped tombstone is a notable local landmark. However, because her final resting place is so far from Hollywood, her fans there felt she had been abandoned by the industry. In 1998, her fan club raised money to place a cenotaph, a memorial monument, for someone buried elsewhere for her at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. The elegant cenotaph is inscribed, "We live to love you more each day," and features a prominent statue. This has created a curious duality. Her actual body lies in a small town in Pennsylvania, while a monument in her honor stands in Hollywood's most famous cemetery. Her real grave, while cared for, feels abandoned by the glamour of Hollywood, a situation only partially rectified by the proxy monument thousands of miles away. Reeves was buried at Mountain View Cemetery and Mausoleum in Altadena, California. His ashes were originally placed in a mausoleum before being moved to a more prominent plot in the cemetery. His grave is marked by a simple bronze plaque on a stone base. For a man who played one of the most iconic characters of all time, his gravesite is surprisingly understated and not widely visited. It feels abandoned, not in a physical sense, but in a spiritual one, a lonely resting place for a man whose heroic on-screen persona masked a tragic and deeply troubled life, and whose mysterious death remains one of Hollywood's most enduring and unsettled cold cases. Todd was cremated, and her ashes were placed in her mother's crypt at Bellevue Cemetery in her hometown of Lawrence, Massachusetts. The cemetery is a historic, but now somewhat overgrown and aged burial ground. Her crypt is located within the large public mausoleum on the grounds. While the mausoleum itself is maintained, it has the quiet, lonely feel of a place whose time has passed. Her ashes rest there, thousands of miles from the Hollywood glamour and violent mystery that defined the end of her life. Her final resting place is a stark, quiet contrast to her vibrant screen presence. A truly abandoned cold case, memorialized in a forgotten corner of New England. Chaney died from throat cancer at the age of 47. His death was mourned by the entire industry. His funeral was a major event, and he was interred in the Great Mausoleum at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, a cemetery known for its elaborate memorials to Hollywood royalty. Yet, in a final, poignant irony, the grave of the man of 1,000 faces, has no face at all. His crypt is completely and permanently unmarked. His wife, Hazel, who is interred with him, wanted it that way to ensure his privacy and peace in death. To this day, the cemetery honors that wish and will not reveal the exact location of his crypt to the public. For 90 years, one of the most famous and recognizable stars of his era has rested in total anonymity. It is perhaps the most deliberately abandoned grave in all of Hollywood, not neglected, but intentionally erased from public view. A blank wall that hides a master of disguise for eternity. He was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills. For a time, his grave was unmarked, a decision made to prevent it from becoming a morbid tourist attraction. His mother eventually placed a simple bronze marker, but it was located in a hard-to-find spot. Years later, his son, actor Freddie Prinze Jr., had his father's remains moved to a more accessible and prominent location within the same cemetery. Today, he rests in the Court of Remembrance, his crypt marked with a plaque that includes a touching inscription from the Little Prince. While the grave is now well tended and honored, its history is one of deliberate concealment and abandonment, born from the trauma of his death. The journey of his remains reflects the family's long journey through grief and their effort to reclaim his memory from the darkness of his tragic end, finally giving him a place of honor after years of being hidden away. Frawley was a lifelong Catholic and was buried at the San Fernando Mission Cemetery in Mission Hills, California. Despite his enormous fame from I Love Lucy, for 22 years his grave was marked with only a small, standard-issue, temporary plaque from the funeral home. There was no proper headstone. The final resting place of one of television's most iconic characters was almost completely anonymous and neglected. In 1988, a longtime fan named Sylvia Dodd, who had visited the grave annually, finally organized a campaign to raise money for a permanent headstone. The new marker features a sketch of Frawley and the simple inscription, "Good night, bright prince." His grave was truly abandoned for over 2 decades, saved from obscurity not by the television industry, but by a loyal fan. Hattie McDaniel made history in 1940 when she became the first African American to win an Academy Award for her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. It was a monumental achievement, but her career was still constrained by the racist casting practices of the era. On her deathbed, suffering from breast cancer, McDaniel had 2 final wishes. One was that her Oscar be donated to Howard University. The second was that she be buried in Hollywood Memorial Park, now Hollywood Forever Cemetery, alongside the stars she had worked with. When she died in 1952, the cemetery's owner, Jules Roth, enforced a whites-only policy and refused her burial. Her final wish was denied. McDaniel was instead buried at the Angelus Rosedale Cemetery, one of the first integrated cemeteries in Los Angeles. For decades, her grave was marked by a simple plaque. Her wish was abandoned by a racist system. Decades later, in 1999, after a change in ownership, Hollywood Forever sought to right this historic wrong. They installed a large, pink granite cenotaph, a memorial monument, in a prime location overlooking the lake. It is a beautiful and prominent tribute. However, McDaniel's actual remains are still across town at Angelus Rosedale. The story of her burial is the story of a wish abandoned, a wrong that could only be partially corrected. Her 2 resting places, the real and the symbolic, tell a powerful story about the segregation that haunted her life and even followed her in death. Being the son of a genius like Charlie Chaplin cast a long and inescapable shadow. Both of Chaplin's eldest sons, Charlie Jr. and Sidney, followed their father into acting, but never came close to achieving his level of fame. Charlie Jr.'s life was particularly troubled. He had a minor acting career but struggled with alcoholism and personal demons. In March of 1968, he died of a pulmonary embolism in Hollywood at the age of 42. His mother, Lita Gray, Chaplin's second wife, had him buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. His grave is marked by a simple, flat-on-the-ground stone. Sidney Chaplin had a more successful career, winning a Tony Award for his work on Broadway. He lived a much longer life, dying in 2009 at the age of 82. He was also buried at Hollywood Forever, near his mother Lita and his brother Charlie Jr. Their graves are located in a quiet, unassuming part of the cemetery, far from the grand monuments of stars like Rudolph Valentino. What makes their graves feel so abandoned is their father's final resting place. The great Charlie Chaplin is buried thousands of miles away in a small cemetery in Corsier-sur-Vevey, Switzerland, the country where he lived his final years in exile from the United States. His sons lie in the heart of Hollywood, the town their father dominated and then rejected, forever separated from him in death. Their modest graves feel like a forgotten postscript to a much larger story.